walk around of the raised bed gardens. These are our 3 original raised beds that we've had for a number of years. And out in the distance is 2 new raised beds, but we'll cover these first. On the right, on the right side, you'll see tomato plants and some basil, and there's some daikon radish growing there. These tomato plants are some 8 feet tall at the present time. Immediately to the left of those is some bell peppers, and there's also some banana peppers and jalapeno peppers in there. Those bushes are now about 3 feet tall. And in the far left bed is the bush beans, which are also about 3 feet tall. And off to the far left you'll see a little fire ring that has rhubarb plants in it. We've been very successful with growing rhubarb in those fire rings. So we'll walk in a little closer and look at the vegetable gardens here. As I indicated, these are our tomatoes. These are the sun gold tomatoes, and they're doing very well. We've got a lot of tomatoes in there. We're picking probably close to a quart a day of tomatoes off of these plants right here. And as I said, these tomato cages are 8 feet tall, and the tomatoes have gone out the top of them. So they're doing very, very well. Next to it is a red brandywine tomato, which is also doing very well. We've had approximately 1 tomato per day off of this plant here. And between them is another red brandywine. And the last one there, or the last 2 there, are Golden Delicious. They have a lot of tomatoes in them, but those are very slow to mature, so we've had no yellow Golden Jubilees yet. Hanging off the edge of the raised beds, and this is on all the beds, I have sweet alyssum plants. These are planted for the pollinators to bring them in, and in particular things like the aphid wasps that love these. The end section of this bed is open right now. I harvested the lettuce out of here, which had gone to seed, and I've not replanted this bed yet. As we move over to the next bed, you'll see that there's a yellow brandywine tomato here, and it's got fruit ripening, and we're picking a couple fruits a day off of that. And surrounding it is some more of the golden, or the sweet alyssum, and basil, more sweet alyssum. And then we have the jalapeno peppers, banana peppers, and the bell peppers there. The next bed has the lacinato, or dinosaur kale, which looks kind of thin right now because we just harvested it yesterday, but it's still growing well. Next to the kale is the Swiss chard, spinach, and then leaf lettuce. This is black-seeded Simpson, and it's about to go to seed on us, so it's about finished. In the adjacent bed to this is a U-shaped bed, and the adjacent bed again is the bush beans. These are Blue Lake 274 bush beans. And between them we had the onions, and those are we're bunching onions, and now they're going for fall storage onions, and they'll be harvested in the near future. And beyond that is a fire ring again with the rhubarb in it. So we'll continue walking around the beds here, and you'll see the beds from a different angle. And again, that's our lettuce and our onions, and our bush beans are growing there. Been very happy with these raised beds. They've been extremely productive, and much more so than we used to have row gardens, in-ground row gardens. And we produce probably 4 times as much vegetables and produce now from these raised beds as we used to with the in-ground gardens. So we're very, very happy with this, and especially these tomatoes. It's unbelievable how they have grown. I'll take some snapshot pictures close up of the beans and the peppers, and include those in the video as well. Next we'll walk to the back, and you can see that path of dirt there. That's where I dug a trench to put drip irrigation into the 2 beds in the very back. and you can see those through the fruit trees. We'll walk back there and do a separate video of those. Through the fruit trees, you can now see the two beds back here and the tunnel arbor that we built over it. This arbor is built with cattle panels. There's 3 12-foot by 4-foot cattle panels on end and arched over to make that beautiful arbor. And on that arbor on this end, we've got tomatoes growing. Those are Rutgers tomatoes growing there. And I just picked the tomatoes this morning, so there's no current red ones in there. But we're getting 3 and 4 Rutgers a day off of that plant. Next to it is some daikon radishes, and again some sweet alyssum there. Next to the tomato plant, which is now over 6 feet tall, there are acorn squash growing there. In front of that is onions that were started from seed. We have a what looks like a bare spot. I just pulled the leaf lettuce from that and planted beets in there yesterday, so that'll be beets in the very near future. And again, that's acorn squash. Next to that, we have a bed of blue lake bush beans growing, and they are doing extremely well. They're just now starting to bloom. These are a new planting. Beyond that is a butternut squash, which is growing up the trellis. Coming over the top of the trellis is pole beans, blue lake pole beans, and they have gone up one side and started down the other. You can see the many blooms on these beans. They're just loaded with blooms, and they'll soon be setting beans on there. And this again is a butternut squash, and if we look inside of that squash, you can see a squash growing down inside of there, hanging off the trellis. And I'll briefly walk through the trellis here, and I'll show you some acorn squash that are growing as well on this trellis. There are 2 of them there that are growing. There's another one on the far end. They're all hanging off of the plant there. Again, there's the Rutgers tomatoes. Coming across the other side, there's the yellow brandywine. And this side is completely covered with pole beans. And if you look closely, you'll notice there's a few beans hanging here, and they'll soon be ready to pick. We picked one batch off of here 3 days ago, but there'll soon be another batch. As we come out, you can see the tunnel arbor again, and this end is covered with the blue lake pole beans. They go clear up the trellis and over the other side, as I indicated. In front of those are perennial onions. Those are red Welsh bunching onions, or multipliers, and they're permanent. Every year you just stick one back into the ground where you pull out a bunch, and it grows, and next spring you have a bunch of bunching onions again. Next to that is some Detroit red beets and some Danvers carrots growing there. And beyond that is the summer squash, which were just picked this morning. These are yellow straight neck summer squash. And behind that again is a yellow brandywine tomato. Growing at the end of the garden is a row of sunflowers, which are planted for the birds as well as our enjoyment of the flowers. Below that, in the back to Eden garden, is the winter squash, which is cushaw squash. These are very large squash. They can't be grown on a vine because each squash weighs excess of 20 pounds. And these are just now in bloom and just starting to set fruit. Beyond the gardens, and you'll see a bunch of native bee houses there, and beyond that is our butterfly garden, which is in full bloom of the prairie coneflower at the moment, and there's also some echinacea bloom in there. I'll back up here and you can see these pole beans. They have done just amazingly well on this trellis, and I'm very, very happy with this cattle panel trellis. And again, there's the winter squash growing there in front of the beds. Summer squash is full of blooms. Every morning those blooms open and they're full of bees, and they close midday, and no bees in there now at this time of day. Through the squash you can probably see the brandywine tomatoes that are hanging in there. We will have a big group of those in the not too distant future. Tomato coming over the top from the other side. So that concludes the tours of the raised bed gardens for this year. And if you have any questions, post them in the comments and I'll be glad to answer them.